Good evening, YouTube. Tyre Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. It's a much quieter day today. There was still some action, but not anywhere near to the extent. And really, yesterday's event as a whole kind of underperformed for what we were expecting, which is great news. Still plenty of tornadoes, and there were a few deadly ones, unfortunately. But as much activity as we got, it could have been a whole lot worse. So there is something to be grateful for. Of course, our thoughts are with everyone that's been affected by severe weather over the last few weeks. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into things here, because there is still a marginal risk for tomorrow, which will be Thursday. You can see that our severe threat has been downgraded all the way from enhanced to marginal. From what I saw, maybe one severe thunderstorm warning remains, one severe thunderstorm watch remains. And here's the storm reports. We've gotten 3 tornadoes, one in Texas, one in Kentucky, and one in Indiana. We've had a significant number of wind reports, 133, and then 17 hail reports. Yesterday was a huge hail event for the most part. A lot of these storms ended up being elevated. So, as a whole, all things considered, we're going to actually go ahead and take a look back at yesterday's reports while we're at it. But as a whole, I think the way that the manner in which these storms fired ultimately could have very well limited the tornado potential. That plus the capping inversion. But the more nerdy stuff may come in a different video, depending on how many people may upvote or want that to be the case here. But 16 tornado reports yesterday. For a moderate risk that was driven by a tornado threat, that's actually pretty low. There still were a couple of significant ones, and if you were in the stream last night, we actually got to see a couple of them from some storm chaser feeds. So if you leave a little something in the comment section, by the way, if you happen to be on stream last night as that was occurring. But that being said, look at the hail reports here. 372, 61 being significant hail. There were even reports of baseball-sized hail, maybe even beyond at some points. But it's ridiculous. But overall, not as bad as what it could have been. That being said, we still have Thursday to deal with. Now, the setup for Thursday is pretty interesting here. Thursday, we have 2 areas of interest. We have one over towards Texas, and we have one over towards the mid-Atlantic here. Neither of these have a high tornado threat. It's pretty minimal for the most part. There is a wind and hail threat that exists with both of these, especially the wind threat for the mid-Atlantic. The hail threat exists more over towards Texas, where storms are expected to be elevated. But what I've been noticing over the last couple of model runs in general, the overall wind profile that we had been dealing with over the last couple of days, it doesn't really exist with this setup. So if you're worried about an upgrade to a slight risk or higher, I'm just here to tell you, odds are that's not going to happen. So there's some good news for you. But there is still some danger there. So we're going to go to the temperatures here in the NAM 3 kilometer. I think the newest one is about to come in right now, so this is probably going to look a tiny bit different. But that being said here, look at the temperatures as we get into the afternoon hours. About 18Z, which would be noon around this time frame here. Got temperatures around Northern Virginia, parts of Maryland, and even Delaware getting into the 80s here. And then same across the southeast here. The warmest temperatures, of course, are going to be furthest to the south, but the ingredients are going to be over towards mid-Atlantic. If we go ahead and take a sounding, we'll actually be able to look at some of the parameters here. Oh, that's interesting. It's the first tornado sounding I've seen with this event. But one thing that is comforting to know is that the overall wind profile, which is represented by the storm relative velocity here, is pretty weak. And you can even see it just by looking at the hordeograph. These numbers that are going up in this direction are winds measured in knots. And this little red curve kind of indicates the lower levels of the atmosphere, which is a key part of tornado genesis. And we're not even getting up to 20 knots. Usually you want to be at 30 to 40 knots for a traditional tornado threat. We're only at a fourth of that, so that's a very good sign. This doesn't have a classic supercell look, but there's enough turning at the low level and directional shear to where apparently this sounding does think that there is a chance of producing a tornado. Will it happen? I kind of lean towards no, but we'll see what happens with this. This does have a couple of sounding analogs for hail here, so that's not surprising given the nature of the storm system. This has been a big time hailer. Excuse me. The other thing to make note of is the decape here. Decape is usually a good indicator for damaging wind potential. I'm actually going to mark this area right here in case you can't see it. But right here is where the decape is, and we're at a 677. Numbers are pretty high for that. So we could very well end up seeing some damaging winds from this. Not the most impressive damaging winds I've seen, maybe up to 60, 65 miles per hour tops. But a thing to note here is the cap or cape values here, not the cap. I've been talking about that too much over the last couple of days. The cape values, you can see that in the red here. I'm going to try to underline it as best as I can, but we're looking at 3,500 plus joules per kilogram in this region. There's so much energy in that atmosphere. Perfect fuel for thunderstorms to grow and thrive here. Plenty of instability. So that's the main reason why I think we have this marginal risk in effect right now. Everything else is impressive to unimpressive or relatively low. But this threat will persist for at least a couple of hours, but just as quickly as it comes on, it's going to be out of here, as most of the parameters will be moving offshore and out to sea. After that, the weather's going to be pretty calm. So that's what the temperature looks like. Dew point's going to be a pretty similar deal. It's going to be pretty muggy across the southeast for the next couple of days, honestly, while we're waiting for this cold front to pass here. There could be some showers and thunderstorms that spread out much further than where the severe threat is. Could even get a pole severe storm, that can't be ruled out, but for the most part, we're just expecting a lot of rain, a lot of muggy air, and that's pretty much that. But if we can look over this region here, we're seeing plenty of mid to upper 60 degree dew points, a few 70s here and there, especially through the Carolinas, which is why they're under moderate risk as well. We even go ahead and click those guys, give them a sounding. Again, it's a pretty similar deal. Profile for wind, the shear profile, not impressive at all. Cape values is the main story to be had there. And no real supercell analogs with this one, so that's another good sign that we don't think that this should be a significant evening. But we'll of course keep an eye on to make sure things don't change, because they very well can in the weather world. And then after the severe threat, most of that Gulf of Mexico moisture finally starts to retreat. It more so will start to retreat on Saturday, and let's hope that it stays that way, because I work outside in this stuff and it's not fun. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. That being said, the last thing for us to really look at here as far as models is concerned is by looking at the reflectivity here. Not too concerned about snow at this point. Most of the snow is going to be north of the border by this time. Still do see a little bit of severe potential. It's relatively minimal. As we drag this on, we'll see some more showers and thunderstorms develop across the south. And then this little moisture plume is going to run over into the northeast, and we could see a few storms develop just after lunchtime. So probably be persistent until about maybe 5-6 p.m. Then by the time we get towards about 9-10 o'clock, the worst of the weather's out of here. But there is some remnant showers and thunderstorms that could be advecting its way into the southeast by Friday. So it could cause for a wet start to some people's weekend. But as we get into Saturday, it looks like some of that moisture will be persisting, especially across some of the Gulf Coast states and then the Appalachia. That's pretty much what we have going on there. But there's also one thing to remember here that probably has gotten lost in the midst of the severe weather potential that we had. And that's the winter weather side of this system here. This storm dropped a lot of snow. There's actually still blizzard warnings in effect across North and South Dakota here. But here's some of the totals as of right now. And these still aren't the final totals. These are the totals from 7 a.m. this morning. There still was some snow falling by this point. But what we can see here, there's quite a few places that got 8 to 12 inches through North and South Dakota. And even more widespread places where we're getting about 2 to 4 plus inches. Even up to maybe 6 inches. Once we get towards South Dakota, back towards Wyoming, and towards the Rocky Mountains, the totals really start to pick up from that point. Seeing 1 to 2 feet has become a little bit more common at this point, and then through Wyoming, it's a similar deal. Utah, Colorado, Idaho, a lot of you guys got some pretty significant snow, and again, keep in mind, what we're seeing here are not the final totals. We really wouldn't be able to see that until tomorrow. But it just goes to show how incredible that storm system was, how incredibly dynamic it was. So this one will be one to remember. Maybe not so much for its tornadoes, even though they were still impressive. But more so, I'm going to remember this one for the hailer that it was. It's not very often you see 300 plus hail reports in one day. That's crazy to think about. You don't see that in March or April, that's for sure. You'd see that more in the summertime with more elevated thunderstorm potential. But that being said, enough rambling from me. Appreciate everyone who came in yesterday afternoon, yesterday evening for the live stream. We were up for about a good 6 hours almost, or a little over 6 hours actually. But I enjoy doing this, and I hope to do it again at some point, maybe in a less serious manner. But we'll see what happens there. Of course, whenever the weather gets serious, we'll do what we can to be live. But anyway, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share these videos to a friend that might be interested in weather especially. Discord server will be in the description. And then, of course, comments are always open. But anyway, it's been Tire Metal at Weatherman. You guys have a good night. Take care, and I will see you soon.